What is going on, Small Gains family? I hope you're all doing good wherever it is that you're listening to this from today. If you're in the gym or if you're running, I hope you have a sick workout. If you're chilling or driving or out on a wander, I hope you are having a lovely time. I've been looking forward to putting out this episode for ages, and I'm trying to be a little bit more ADHD friendly with the pace of my episodes and the length of time. So I'm splitting today's into two parts, but I know some of you are itching to get your hands on all of it. And I know some of you like to put it on during your long runs. So I'm going to put both parts out at exactly the same time because I absolutely love a half an hour podcast. Sometimes I can go in really deep with anything between 1 and 3 hours, but only if I'm driving or running. Any other time, I would find it hard to concentrate. So in the name of accessibility, I'm committing to more 30-minute podcasts, but if they're long boys and they're chats with people like this one, I will always put them out at the same time. I won't make you wait for another week because that's a bit rude, really, isn't it? So today I have on another internet friend of mine. I have a feeling we might have played a show together back in the day, but I actually don't know that. I don't even know why he was following me in the first place, but we got chatting. I gave him a follow back. He runs an awesome run club and he works in a running shoe shop. So he is the perfect person to come on and yap about shoes with me. I absolutely bloody love trainers. They're the best. And not just running shoes, lifestyle shoes, gym shoes, any kind of shoes. I find it really hard not to nerd out about trainers and shoes in general. And some of you might have seen that I've actually had to sell loads of my shoes recently because my feet grew on testosterone and it broke my heart, but I'm trying to replace them all via Vinted and I'm slowly getting there. Anyway, I digress. Craig runs a wonderful running club up in Scotland in Edinburgh called Good Time Running Club. And he has built that up with a friend based on negative and rubbish experiences that they've had in running clubs previously. And I wish there was one of these in every single town because we need more of them. Craig also runs a store in Edinburgh that you may have heard of, Up and Running. It's a chain running shoe store. So he is very up on all of his running shoe talk. And we basically go through everything you need to know about running shoes. So we talk about the basics of picking out your first ever running shoe, what gait analysis is, how to get it done, why it's important, what you should be budgeting for running shoes, hype brands versus the usual household names, determining the right fit and size for you, which isn't what you think, and the importance of the width of the shoe. Is a shoe rotation necessary? Picking different types of shoes for different runs. And then finally, we get a little bit nerdy about carbon plates and super shoes. And then we finish off with a bunch of myth busting around running shoes. It's such a good episode. If you like running, you're going to get so much value out of this. I hope you love it. Let's do the thing. The vibes in Good Time Running sound so lovely.
Oh, thank
How
you.
long has it been going for? Was it you that started it? Was it someone else? Tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, sure. So the Good Time Running Club started in 2022, and it's co-founded. So it was between myself and my high school friend Oliver. We had reconnected just because of how incredible the benefits we found for running was for our mental health, mostly. I was thinking a lot about this earlier. There's nothing I can quite find like running that quite clears my head. I'll maybe be having like quite a stressful day or so, and when able to go out for 30 minutes to 40 minutes for a run, and all of a sudden I just start thinking a bit clearer and things just start kind of clicking into place. We love the idea of running clubs, but we had actually had some unfortunate kind of negative experiences, two different experiences. One that was horrible that Oliver's spoken about before that he's told me about was he used to be, I believe, in a WhatsApp group for a running club, and their whole premise was that they were going to remove the slowest runner every week. So they'd like have a review of how everyone had ran, and no longer include the smallest runner, which even as I say that out loud, that sounds like the most baffling thing I've ever heard. Like, that is ludicrous, like
It's like the weakest link.
it's horrible.
But for runners, that's
Yeah,
wild and horrible.
absolutely. So Oliver definitely took that experience on board and was like, well, I think, I could maybe start something that would be a lot nicer than that, of course,
Yeah.
although it wouldn't be difficult. Another experience I had was I'd actually gone along to a social run group with my partner at the time. And I was just a bit stunned. Like, we turned up, quite a lot of people kind of kept to themselves and no one mingled as such. Like, the run finished and then people kind of went back to like the people they'd arrived with and were chatting, and that's absolutely fine. But we had tried to maybe like initiate some conversation and we didn't really get much back. And I kind of thought, what was the point of us turning up to something advertised as social?
Yeah.
When it was going to be really cliquey. So when myself and Oliver started Good Time Running Club, we had literally no idea it would ever get to the kind of size it would be. I try and go out my way almost to try and speak to every single person who arrive. It gets hard. Now there's times where like 10 new runners will turn up and I can't see everyone. But I'll always try and make sure and, we introduce ourselves, tell people about why we do things, and just get to hear people. Because people have been coming along to this club now, so it's just over 3 years. And, they've made friends for life, which I can see online now, which I think is amazing. There's people that, I've been to weddings to of and such. So it's huge. And yeah, it's been a big part of my life now. So
It honestly sounds like a dream running club. And I think I have so many aspirations and dreams of all the things I want to do with Fuzz Culture Club. And I think if I was ever going to try and replicate the community vibes that you create and that I create online, I would be 100% like looking to you guys, because it just, the way everything is presented is so wholesome. And I think, like, I follow Good Time Running Club and knowingly that I'm probably not gonna do a run with you at any point.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I think the chances of me are maybe actually quite high if I'm ever up that end, but
Sure. Yeah,
I follow it just because the vibe is lovely, and that's probably a testament to the last 3 years, which is awesome. I'm gonna be repping my Good Time socks for my half marathon as well in a few weeks. They're so comfy. So pivoting from merch to the reason why you're here, which is to talk about shoes.
Yeah.
And hopefully answer a lot of people's questions. I spoke to my team about, stuff that they were interested in and compiled a lot of conversations that I've been having with my lot in their check-ins over the last month. I want to start with the basics first, which is, when we are a complete beginner, how would someone like roughly decide what kind of running shoe they would buy?
Yeah.
Where would they start?
So the one thing I'm going to make hopefully perfectly clear, obviously I do run a running store. I don't want to sound like I'm totally biased, but I've actually ran the store I work in since February 2024. And I've learned quite a lot. But one thing that was fascinating to me was, so I maybe used to be like an online shoe buyer. And I honestly can't sing the praises enough of the physical stores, because, you've got this insight that's just, so vast, because we all get to try things all the time. But one thing I would say that is quite understandable is very intimidating for someone to come into a running store just for information. It's a minefield out there, I'd say, of like information. There's so much going on. There's websites with hundreds of different brands and such. But I'm quite open when a customer comes in to say that, even if someone doesn't end up purchasing from me personally, I want to just try and make sure that they get the right thing. So as an absolute basic, I'd go in and make sure you get fittings, maybe not the right thing, but I'd find it very important to find out your shoe size.
If someone's just started running, they're running in their local park, maybe they got aspirations to do a park run or just to build to a 5K and then maybe a 10K, how would they decide what shoe they got? How would they know what was the right shoe for like a road run versus a trail run without necessarily getting really in deep? Is that something that's kind of easily identified?
Yeah, I'd say so. We kind of split all of our shoes between road and trail. Trail shoes, the one thing you're just going to mostly look out for is going to be sole. So you're going to have quite, like, they'll have different depths, but they'll have lugs on them. But a road shoe will typically be, obviously, they might have a bit of grip, which can be quite good. We do have models out there that are called like door to trail, which is quite accessible. A runner might want to do running up hills as well as road running. So these door-to-trail shoes do exist for a very good reason like that. Like a road shoe would have probably minus features from what a trail shoe would have, I would say. Like a standard shoe, as I say, it'll have a very cushioned base, probably quite a light upper would be quite a thing to look out for. You don't want a shoe to be heavy at all. Like, if it's going to get very sweaty, even in winter.
Yeah.
And I guess lacing would be something that'd be quite important for people as well. Some people like, have you ever, Salomon, the brand?
Yeah.
So they'll have like a quite nice lacing technique that's actually not like tied at all. It's like a lock lace system where you can just pull a drawstring. But as a road shoe, there's so many different styles now. You're probably going to want to look out for something that a brand themselves would describe as a daily trainer.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm maybe getting at, because when we start getting into like a tempo shoe, a race shoe, a marathon shoe, when someone is literally just starting out, would it be to look for something like daily runs?
Yeah, daily trainer, daily runner would kind of be the term. So I find that sometimes when I speak to customers, I'll maybe use that and forget that it's not necessarily like a common lingo.
Yeah.
The daily trainer is kind of what they mean, yeah. So it'll be more advanced than your like a cheaper shoe that you might get somewhere. But it is still like just a very accessible, it kind of does everything really. It might not necessarily excel in any areas. So you could run like, a half marathon or beyond in a daily trainer, but it maybe just won't have some of the features that the other shoes have. That is the thing to look out for, yeah.
And the road to trail, or was it door to trail that you said? That's really good.
The same thing, basically. Yeah, door to trail is what I like to call it. So basically, if you imagine you could leave your house, but your intention is to eventually, like, climb a hill nearby or go into like a kind of grassy or gravelly area, that's a shoe that would tick both boxes there.
Yeah, I have a separate pair of trail runners that I don't use very often. I mostly just bought them to try them so I could recommend them.
Yeah.
But actually where I live is such a mixture of road and trail that I could probably do with one of those, and I definitely don't need another pair of shoes, but we'll get into that later. What would you say is like the most common mistake people make when they're choosing what shoe to get at the beginning?
Your size is really important, and I can speak from my own experience from that actually, because back when I first got shoes, I'd fit into a size 11 and think, yeah, this is absolutely spot on. But then I forgot how our body has impact on our feet. So even if you're walking for a very long day, like it won't be quite as extreme. But if you're going to run, imagine your entire body weight's coming down onto your feet. There will be an impact on that, so they will swell. So my recommendation is always to maybe go like a half size minimum, if not a full size up from your kind of your lifestyle trainer size, if that makes sense, like your everyday shoe.
Yeah.
Just give yourself that room. Like you make sure like you've got like at least, I always say like a kind of a thumb above your toes. If you imagine lying your thumb on its side, just make sure that there's almost that much room on the top there, and that's room for your feet to swell. It can even happen, I suppose, 10K upwards, but it's more likely to happen half marathon to marathon. And you definitely don't want to be out there doing a run like that and discover that you've got nowhere for your feet to go. So sizing would be the number one mistake I would think of, yeah.
Yeah, there may be people listening to this thinking, oh God, I definitely don't have a thumb's worth of room.
Possibly not, no. And you'd be stunned at how many people come in to buy shoes off me, and they come in and they say maybe like, I'm a size 6 and they leave in an 8. I've had that before. Like they'll go 2 sizes fully up and the shoe still, it fits the foot. But there's ways you can lace your shoes which can help out as well, One thing that's very, very common is quite a lot of people have 2 different feet sizes. Yeah. They'll maybe have a 5.5 and a 6. So it makes it very awkward to buy a shoe. But there are things like, it's a technique you can call the runner's heel lock, or the runner's lock that you can put onto your shoe, which is unfortunately going to be quite hard for me to describe without visually showing it. But you could look it up. But that can help tighten one shoe around your heel, and while the other one is the right size, if that makes sense.
That's something I do. My right is bigger than my left, so I have to use the extra holes to make sure my left doesn't slide down when it fits my right. Super handy. That was also something shown to me by someone in a running shop that I didn't know about either. So another perk of going and talking to someone in it. So moving on to Gait, which I'm guessing is maybe another thing a beginner runner might not always know about, but I think is becoming more well-known with how much content is made about running right now. Can you talk us through the importance of like getting your gait checked. What is our gait? Why is it important?
So our gait analysis, we basically will film you running, typically on a treadmill. Now, we assess the way that your feet land. So the terminology that you use is called pronation. So if you had what was called a completely neutral gait, so that's the way that your feet land, and your leg was completely straight, well, what we live for is to make sure that your knee and your hip are completely straightly aligned. And if that's happening on both legs, then we'd provide an assessment which says that you have what's called a neutral gait, which means that it's not recommended you have any assistance. Whereas you can have what's either called overpronation, which is obviously is the most common. That is where your feet would tip inwards. So your ankles would maybe fall inwards towards the other foot. And the opposite of that, where you fall outward, would be called supination. So overpronation is extremely common. And I guess one thing that I was definitely keen to speak about today is to just make sure that the gait analysis, it takes very, very little time for us to do. It's not a
Yeah.
lengthy process. A lot of people think it's quite intimidating, like they have to book. It's almost like going to like a specialist and such. But I would honestly say every single time you're going to try a shoe, I think it would be the first thing to do, because your gait isn't like set in stone. It will change, like depending on, your body's biomechanics can change. So therefore, I think sometimes a common misconception is it's almost like someone thinks they've got a ticket and it says, right, you're a neutral runner. That's you for life. Don't ever run in anything described differently. That's you. Whereas actually, you might find that over time, like your feet will change. It's massive post injury. Like you imagine like you've broken an ankle, or you've got hip pain or something, your feet might land in a different way. And therefore, the verdict, if we find out that you overpronate, as I was saying, which is most common, is where we then recommend what we call a stability shoe. I think sometimes people think it sounds like really bad and intimidating and such, and like they're going to get like a horrible product. But I mean, I use a mixture of stability shoes as well as neutral shoes. And that is another point to make, is that you don't necessarily have to stick with one. The absolute key is comfort. Obviously, you make sure that, you're happy where you land. But these stability models will just offer a varying level of assistance. So therefore, you imagine when your feet land, they'll have a post which sits just above your midsole, and that will hopefully try and just kind of tip your foot upright. So the analogy that I've always used, which kind of visualizes this really well, is like using support on a bowling alley.
Yeah,
If you
putting
were
the
to have the
bumpers up.
rails on the side. So if you
Yeah.
were to visualize a bowling ball tipping one way or the other, those rails just kind of act as an assistance that kind of just props it back up and then puts you back into that neutral position. And the reason why you'd want to be in that position is if you just picture landing on your foot in an awkward angle, over how many steps you do, even on a 5 kilometer run or anything shorter, but definitely up to like a kind of half marathon or beyond, that can cause all kinds of pain, because it kind of just shoots up your leg almost. Like if you imagine like where the foot lands, it'll just come back up and maybe affect your joints quite badly. So like your knees and your hips. So that would be the main
Yeah.
reason to get a gait analysis.
Awesome. Yeah, and you've already kind of like answered one of the things that I was going to ask you, which was
All right.
with our gait changing over time.
Yeah.
I'm a person that overpronates,
Okay.
and I also wear a mixture of neutral and stability. I'll do stability for my longer runs.
Okay.
For things like high rocks or comps where there's running, I'll do more neutral, responsive shoes, just because that's what I like and that's what
Yeah.
I've worked out over the years for me. But obviously I broke my ankle as well, and that was kind of something I had to revisit to find out if it had changed, and it hadn't.
Mm.
If somebody is generally, neutral or overpronating, is there anything else apart from injury that can cause it to change? Because I guess biomechanically, if someone overpronates, they could potentially do a ton of prehab in the gym that would correct it over a long period of time. But how often do we actually see it change if it's not necessarily related to an injury or something like a major change to like musculoskeletal system?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know if I have an exact answer on, a verdict on how often it could change, but some advice I would probably get is, I did this actually. It might not be something that every single person can do, but there's a man in Edinburgh who offers a business called Improve My Running. And he gave a full assessment of my biomechanics. And what was actually fascinating, so I definitely have an extent of pronation, but he assessed that my hip alignment actually was like completely out just by filming me. So he assessed that I land on my right side, I tend to kind of like tip inward a little bit.
Yeah.
And that had quite an effect on the way I was running as well. So what he'd given advice, like there was ways of correcting that. And then it's not necessarily always a type of shoe, but that assessment might be something I might go back to in a year's time. I'm currently injured with a very bad foot pain, so I'm probably going to try and make an appointment to visit him and see what advice he can give. But, some people can remain neutral their whole lives. They'll never ever change. And you might find that runner finds a shoe model and they never ever move from it. So that's very common with a brand such as like Brooks, if you know them.
Yeah.
We get runners who come in and they don't even try on a shoe. They just say, Brooks Ghost, this size, I'll take it now. And they're sorted for life. Whereas other people might just want to keep an eye on it. And like I say, managing a store, it doesn't take any more than 10 minutes to do it. So if someone wanted to come in even quarterly in a year just to make sure, I'd recommend it just to make absolutely certain, because they might experience a niggle, like they might start thinking, my knee's quite sore, and it's worth just finding out that it's not necessarily because your feet have maybe changed the way they land. So
Yeah, totally. I think it's probably also worth mentioning gait analysis is free, and I think often people worry that when they come in and get the gait analysis, not only does it take 10 minutes and it's free, they're maybe worried that someone is going to try and sell them a shoe.
Yeah.
But I always say to them, you can say no. You can say, I'll come back later. I've been in running stores where people have given me shoes to try on, and I have tried them on and I've been like, okay, cool, I'm not going to buy anything today. And no one's ever tried to like upsell anything. And there may be people that are like that every so often, but for the most part, people are very understanding if you're like, I'm not buying today, I'm just trying on or figuring it out, like you kind of said at the beginning. And I think that's what a lot are most apprehensive about, because when they're on a budget, or they might want to go away and think about it and mull over a few options, they don't want to feel pressured to buy it just because they've had the analysis there. And most people are pretty sound like you in that respect, I would say, but it's not always obvious, I guess.
No, and I guess unfortunately that intimidation still exists where people do think they're always going to be sold something, so they don't think they can come for the advice. But I'm very like open policy about that. I can almost see it coming from a mile away, the kind of excuses someone might make to why they won't buy the shoe. And I just think honesty is the best policy there. Like if someone just says to me, I just need this information so I can make the right decision, then I have no problem whatsoever assisting, because that person might be put off by life if they get a bad experience. You don't want that. So, though I would say, I think some places do charge for a gait analysis.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, some businesses I believe might charge, and I think it's very unfortunate. I think they'll do it maybe because like I guess they'll justify an argument like they've spent their time doing it. But I think it should be part of the whole process. Like coming into the store, like I think every customer should do it when they want to buy a shoe to make sure they're getting the right one. And realistically, yeah, making sure they get the right products, this most sensible thing, because otherwise they may just find a new supplier. So yeah.
Yeah, you know what? If I went into a running store and I had my gait checked and it was free, and I tried on some shoes and I had no intention of buying them, I will just bluntly say that. It may just be the autism, and it may just be because I'm old and I don't care. And it may also be the years and years that I spent working in retail. But if I got a really good service and I found a shoe that I liked, I would want to make the effort to buy it in that store if it felt good and I had the means to afford it full price in that store, And it's okay if you don't, because there is people that will always do that do have the means. And I guess it makes sense if a small indie running store wants to charge a tenner, I kind of understand it. It makes it slightly less accessible, but it's, if it helps someone pay their staff a bit more of a living wage, I kind of get it, but do definitely agree. The more stuff like that is easy and available, the better, isn't it? And I suppose when I'm assuming that it's always free, I'm thinking about Up and Running, and I'm thinking about what's the other major one that we have in.
I think across the UK would be Runner's Need. They're a very big one.
Yeah, Runner's Need and Up and Running are the ones that I know have always done it for free, as far as I know. I guess the good thing about those is that there's a lot of them. So hopefully finding it for free, if that's necessary, might be an option, even if you have to go a little bit further. But yeah, get your gait checked before you buy your shoes. Bottom line,
That's the one. Yeah.
and then make sure you've got the right size. Let's talk about money.
Okay.
Now, there is just infinite spend to be had on shoes.
Yeah.
From like what, like 20 to 30 quid to like 500 quid. You know, you can literally buy a pair of runners off Temu. I don't think you ever should though, but you could, but you shouldn't. And then you could buy like a £300 pair of carbon plated race shoes that you'll see like, you know, elite runners wearing, or just people with lots of money. When we think about budget for a beginner runner versus an experienced runner versus fashion and marketing, let's take a beginner to begin with.
Yeah.
What should they realistically budget for their shoes? And I'm not going to say if money wasn't an object, but if they were just a person that had a 9 to 5, pays their rent and bills, but doesn't necessarily have loads of disposable income.
Yeah. So it's very different from when I first started running, which was around about 2013, because I remember buying a pair of shoes, I think it was £70, 70 or 80. And I text my mum saying like, oh, I'm going to buy these running shoes. I'm going to start taking this a bit seriously. And she was like, are you sure you want to spend that much? Like, that's a lot. Whereas like in my store, for example, you'd come in and £70, £80 now would be like the bargain sale shoe.
Yeah.
You know, most of the shoes from the brands themselves will retail themselves. I think 130 is kind of a pretty like standard point now.
Yeah.
But for the demographic you described, you can definitely find a shoe on the market that'd be somewhere between £60 to £80. If you got a full price, as in like retail shoe like that, like you might get something from Decathlon or something, I still think they'll be pretty good. You can definitely run in them. But the advice that I try and always give someone is to maybe, people are eager and want to start running straight away. I do get that. But you may want to save a little bit and just spend that little bit more, because it'll actually save you money in the long run. Because if you buy a kind of cheaper quality shoe, sometimes you may end up just actually either injuring yourself, which is horrible. You know, you spend money on physio there. Or you just find that, you know, you're not quite getting the response you want, and you want to start picking up the pace or doing longer mileage. And then you've ended up having to buy a new full price shoe. So you've spent a lot. But the one piece of advice I'd give everyone, and we you know, like my company do it as well, is we always have things that are out of season. There will always be an accessible product for people. I think we've got a few shoes I was showing the customer the other day that were £60. And, you know, these seasons, brands bring out new shoes every 12 months. So therefore, something can go back on our website and it's been taken off because it's not the current product. But it was on my shelf in the month or so before, if that makes sense. So the product's still absolutely fine. It's just that it's not quite current, so it goes a bit cheaper. So I would say, you know, you could always have a chat with someone in a store or look online and just see some models. I would just be wary that sometimes some brands change their models and they're the exact same. You know, like my friend will buy the previous season's model every time with one brand because they don't change it much. So you'd be as well just buying the cheaper one, which is great. But some will make dramatic improvements and there is almost a benefit to getting the new one. But £60 to £80, I think a person could walk away with a pretty reasonable running shoe.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I don't think I have ever bought a pair of running shoes for full price, and I have always bought new shoes. I get a lot of stuff off Vinted, secondhand. I love it. But running shoes are the one thing that I won't necessarily buy secondhand due to the mileage that I run. It might be different for someone else. You know, someone else might not mind buying off Vinted depending on how often they're running and if they don't run a lot. Because I run a lot, they'll be the thing that I buy new always.
Yeah.
But I never ever have paid full price for them. I've got some New Balance Fresh Foam that were £180 and I got them for 70. And I just lucked out, found them. They were a disgusting color. They're bright yellow. The worst thing about it is they've actually become my favorite speed shoe. So I actually now wear them quite a lot, but they're so ugly. I then got, you said the name different to me. I say Saucony. What do you say?
Yes. Oh, maybe it's my Scottish. I'd say Saucony.
Saucony. You're probably right.
So like sock on.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah,
I've seen that written down before, and I think that's how they pronounce it. But
that definitely is. Like, I've just made it up. But I got an £180 pair of those
yeah,
for £75
yeah, there you go.
because a streetwear company had an end of season sale and a stability running shoe was in
Yeah,
that sale.
great.
Like, a lot of people that buy streetwear aren't looking for a stability running shoe from
Mhm.
a company like End Clothing. So I got a very, very fancy pair of those. I've got like my Hoka trail shoes, again, half price. I don't think I've ever paid full price for a new pair of shoes. And I have a good little rotation going on. And it's very different me sitting here and saying this because for me they are a business expense and
Mhm.
they're not for everyone. But I'm from Hull, I'm from Yorkshire, and I will always find it cheaper.
Yeah,
And having the last season stuff, I guess, is the equivalent to, like, when the iPhone 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 comes out. I used to work for Apple, so this is my relevant example, I guess. But the difference between the iPhone 3 and iPhone 4 was incredible. The difference between like the 12 and 13 was so minimal.
mm.
And I guess it's paying attention to stuff like that. I think I paid £30 from Sports Direct for my first ever pair of running shoes. And I ran in them for about 3 years, didn't pay any attention to the mileage, did my first 5K, my first 10K in them. Like, they were just a pair of like Adidas Duramos or something.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
And this was years and years and years ago. So I reckon they'd probably retail at about 60 quid now based on like cost of living. With the point you said about everybody is keen to start straight away when they get the running bug and they just want to go. But then a mistake that you make is that like you just go out in like your gym shoes or like you go out in a lifestyle trainer, which I definitely made the mistake of a very, very long time ago. I used to run in
Yeah.
my Air Maxes, which is ridiculous. But at the time that was normal. But yeah, holding out, if you can wait an extra payday or hold out for a sale to get something, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck, and it's going to be better than the Temu shoe that you really shouldn't buy.
Yeah, and exactly. And don't get me wrong, there's still going to be a customer that wants to buy the full price product, and I think there's a time and a place for that because, as I say, they do have
100%.
advancements. Like when you said like your iPhone, the new model came out and it was the absolute best. I would actually say a relevant example to that would be Puma.
Yeah,
So Puma have released some amazing shoes in the past, I want to say maybe 18 months, and they've
it's
just released.
wild, isn't it?
Yeah, like they're probably, in my opinion, like I think they're probably the highest quality shoe we have in the store for their speed shoes, certainly, and they come in at an amazing price. But of course, what happens is some people remember the previous models, so there's maybe like a third model out just now, and it's a huge improvement, and they'll look at 1 and 2 and go, "Oh, I didn't love that so much," and they don't think about how much research and development goes into these. Like they want to change the product for the better.
Yeah, I think also with when a brand has a very like standard model, so
Mm,
Puma have now got the Nitro. The Nitro is the high rock shoe, but it's also now becoming a marathon shoe, a race
yeah,
shoe. And they've really like gone from just not really doing a lot to then being in the functional fitness and the running space. And I think
yeah,
at
it's huge
first
for them.
people were cautious about that, but then obviously the products have spoke for themselves. And there's probably, I guess, because the demand is so high that they're putting bare money into the research every single time they make a new shoe. So if this is a hobby and a passion project and not just being fit and healthy and going for a little run a couple of times a week, then it might be that you really want to dive into like trainer YouTube or trainer
Mhm.
TikTok because it can get very fun if you're into that kind of thing. And the kind of developments in the technology can be really exciting, but it can get so expensive so fast.
Yeah,
So beginner option, we're saying what, like 60 to £100 budget?
yeah.
Or 60 to 130 if you wanna buy brand new.
Yeah. And that's to get you a kind of accessible like shoe that kind of does all your types of runs, but not necessarily like at like a top level. A kind of jack of all trades is what a good thing
Yeah.
about a daily trainer shoe is. And then you're spending a bit more for like the kind of more specialist shoes for sure.
Yes, mates, that's part 1 done. If you're on a roll and want to listen to the rest, part 2 will be just below this one, wherever you're listening to this. For anyone that's just getting into running and wants to start building their cardio engine, their running endurance, as well as building their strength, wants to feel strong, jacked, enduring, and I guess, let's be honest, a little bit sexy. Oh my god, I can't believe I just said that. Anyway, my Hybrid Awakening program is live in my Superhuman app. It's a workout subscription, £19 a month, and it will take you from 0 running and 0 gym experience all the way up to being a person that can run continuously for 30 minutes and lift weights with purpose and good intensity and form. I'm very biased, but it is a very, very bloody good program and has helped hundreds of people start their running and strength journey. So if that sounds like your flavor, head to fuzzcultureclub.com/superhuman and sign up there. And if you're a little bit on the fence and you're not sure, if you DM me on Instagram, I will very, very kindly give you a discount code that gets you 50% off your first month so you can try it for £9. That's lovely, isn't it? All right. Have a lovely day. That's it from me. Take it easy, unless you're listening to the next episode. In that case, I'll see you in a minute. Bye.